My name is Marit Brannock, and I was 33 years old when my mother-in-law used a microphone in my son's school gym to tell an entire town that I had stolen from my injured husband. She did it under bright gym lights, beside a table full of donation jars, while paper snowflakes hung from the basketball hoops, and my 8-year-old son stood 10 feet away with a cookie in his hand. Marceline Brannock smiled like she was asking for prayer, but every word was a knife. She told the room that some people used tragedy to control money, control access, and control children. Then she looked straight at me. The whole gym followed her eyes. Parents turned. Teachers went quiet. My son, Bowden, looked up at me and asked the question that almost took my knees out from under me. "Mom, did you really steal Dad's money?" I wanted to run to the microphone. I wanted to tell everyone what kind of woman Marceline really was. I wanted to scream that I had not taken $1, not one check, not one donation, not one piece of sympathy that belonged to my husband. But I did not scream. I took Bowden's hand, walked past the raffle table, past my husband's sister whispering behind her paper cup, past my brother-in-law pretending to look sad, and I left the school gym without saying one word. What none of them knew was that I had spent 6 months doing the one thing I was trained to do. I had been keeping records, and by the time Marceline finished humiliating me in front of my son, I already had enough evidence to destroy the family lie she had built around us. 6 months before that night, my husband, Ansel Brannock, was found half-conscious inside his truck on County Road 550 north of Marquette, Michigan, during a snowstorm so thick the deputies said the road looked like a white wall. Ansel was 36, broad-shouldered, gentle, and the kind of man who would stop in freezing rain to help a stranger change a tire. He ran maintenance at a shipping warehouse near the harbor. He knew engines, heaters, old doors, bad wiring, and every kind of broken thing that could be fixed with patience. That was how he loved people, too. Slowly, quietly, without making a speech about it. That night, his truck slid near a bend, hit a frozen ditch, and rolled hard enough to crush the driver's side. He lived, but the man who came back to me was not the same man who had kissed our son goodnight that evening. He had a head injury, a damaged shoulder, and long empty spaces in his memory. Some mornings he knew my name. Some mornings he stared at me like I was a person from a dream he had not finished. The doctors said recovery would be slow. They said speech might return in pieces. They said hope was reasonable, but nothing was guaranteed. I held on to the word reasonable because it was the only word in the hospital room that did not feel like a warning. Before the accident, we lived a simple life in a small blue house 10 minutes from Lake Superior. I worked as a county records clerk at the Marquette County office, filing deeds, marriage records, business forms, old maps, and certified copies people needed when life got serious. Ansel worked days. I worked steady hours. Bowden went to school, built snow forts in the yard, and believed his father could fix anything. We were not rich, but we were organized. We paid bills on Friday nights. We bought groceries with a list. We saved for repairs before things broke. Ansel kept a coffee can of loose screws on the basement shelf and called it his emergency hardware fund. I teased him about it, but after the accident, I would stand in that basement and look at that coffee can like it was proof that he had once been everywhere in our life at once. The first weeks after the crash were a blur of hospital hallways, rehab forms, insurance calls, and Bowden asking if Dad was going to talk like Dad again. I told him the truth in small pieces. Dad is healing. Dad remembers us. Dad is working hard. I did not promise what I could not control. Ansel had always respected the truth, even when it hurt. Marit Brannock arrived at the hospital on the second day, wearing a cream wool coat and the kind of grief that needed an audience. She was 61, polished, respected, and known in town for church committees, school fundraisers, and handwritten thank you notes that made people think she was kind. She stood at Ansel's hospital door and pressed her hand to the frame like she owned the building. "My boy," she whispered, but she looked at me when she said it, like I was the reason he was lying there with tubes in his arm. Behind her stood Stellan, Ansel's older brother, with his expensive boots and tired eyes, and Karis, Ansel's sister, who hugged me with one arm and checked her phone over my shoulder. At first, I let their coldness pass. People become strange when fear enters the room. Marceline wanted updates from every doctor. Karis wanted photos of Bowden visiting Ansel for family memories. Stellan wanted to know if workers' compensation had called yet, if the insurance company had mentioned settlement numbers, if Ansel had signed any power of attorney papers before the crash. He asked those questions softly, like a concerned brother. But I worked with records for a living. I knew the difference between concern and information gathering. The first small warning came at the rehab center. Ansel had been moved to North Bay Recovery, a clean brick building with wide windows and a view of pine trees. I had signed the medical contact forms myself. Only I could approve care discussions, and visitors had to follow schedule rules because Ansel became exhausted quickly. One Tuesday afternoon, the front desk called me while I was at work. A woman named Beth said, "Mrs. Brannock, your mother-in-law is here asking to review your husband's therapy notes." I closed the file cabinet in front of me and stood very still. "She is not authorized to review his medical records," I said. Beth sounded embarrassed. "That's what we told her. She said you were overwhelmed and the family was stepping in." I thanked her, wrote down the date, time, and staff name on a yellow legal pad, then added it to a folder on my computer called Ansel Incident Log. I did not call Marceline. I did not accuse her. I simply recorded it. 2 days later, Karis stopped me outside Bowden's classroom and said, "Mom thinks it might be easier if Bowden stays with her on therapy days, so you can focus." I said, "Bowden lives with me." Karis smiled with all her teeth showing. "For now, yes." I wrote that down too. By month 2, the town started looking at me differently. Marquette is not tiny, but it is small enough that bad information can travel from a church basement to a grocery aisle before dinner. A woman from Ansel's old high school class saw me buying cereal and touched my arm. "You're so strong," she said. "I just hope the money is being handled in a way that honors Ansel." I stared at her. "What money?" Her face changed. "Oh, I just meant everything people are doing." She walked away too fast. The next week, a man from the shipping warehouse asked if the therapy fund had helped cover the wheelchair ramp. There was no therapy fund that I knew about. The ramp had been paid for with our savings and a small disability grant I applied for myself. When I asked him what he meant, he looked nervous and said, "Maybe I misunderstood." Then he suddenly remembered he needed to be somewhere else. That night, after Bowden went to bed, I searched online and found a public post from Karis. It showed a photo of Ansel from before the accident, smiling beside Bowden at a hockey game. Under it were the words, "Our family is doing everything we can to make sure Ansel gets the care he deserves, even when access and money are difficult. Thank you to everyone supporting the Brannock Recovery Fund." My stomach went cold. The post had 57 comments, praying hands, heart emojis, people asking where to send checks. My name was not in the post, but the shadow of me was everywhere. I asked Stellan about it the next morning. He came to my house with a toolbox he never opened, saying he wanted to check the back door before winter made it worse. He stood in my kitchen, drinking coffee from Ansel's mug, and told me the fund was just a small family thing. I asked who opened it. He shrugged. Mom handled most of it. Karis helped online. It's for Ansel. I said, then why didn't anyone tell his wife? His jaw tightened for half a second before he smiled. Marit, you've had a lot on your plate. Nobody wanted to burden you. That was the first time I heard the sentence that would become their favorite weapon. You have a lot on your plate. It sounded kind. It meant move over. I asked for the account information. Stellan set the mug down too hard. You don't trust us? I looked at him and said, I trust records. He left 5 minutes later and forgot the toolbox. I photographed it on the counter, not because the toolbox mattered, but because the visit did. Date, time, purpose, conversation. Records do not care how politely someone lies. Marceline's campaign grew in careful layers. She told people I was keeping Ansel isolated, even though I drove Bowden to the rehab center 3 days a week and sent visitor schedules to the family every Sunday. She told people I was refusing help, even though every offer came with strings tied around my son. She told people I was unstable, but never to my face. That was her gift. She never yelled in private when a whisper in public could do more damage. At school, other mothers stopped inviting Bowden to birthday parties. One boy told him his grandma said Bowden's mom was mean about money. Bowden came home quiet that day and built a fort under the dining table, the way he had when Ansel first went to rehab. I crawled under there with him and asked if he wanted to talk. He shook his head. His knees were pulled to his chest. If people give money to Dad, he whispered, does that mean Dad gets better faster? I closed my eyes, because childhood should not have to make sense of adult greed. Nobody, I said. Money helps with things. It does not buy healing. He nodded like he understood, but I knew a piece of his safety had been scratched. The school fundraiser happened on a Thursday night in February. It was called Winter Lights for local families, and it had started years earlier as a simple event where families donated to neighbors facing medical emergencies, house fires, or sudden losses. I almost did not go. I was tired, and Ansel had been restless during speech therapy that afternoon. But Bowden wanted to help at the cookie table, and his teacher, Mrs. Valen, had given him a paper badge that said Junior Helper. He wore it over his green sweater like a medal. The gym smelled like popcorn, wet boots, and floor polish. White paper snowflakes hung from fishing line. Folding tables lined the walls. People sold raffle tickets for gift baskets, quilts, and restaurant cards. I saw Karis near the donation jars, speaking to 2 mothers who looked at me and then looked away. I saw Stellan near the stage, holding a clipboard he did not need. Then I saw Marceline standing by the microphone in her dark red coat, her silver hair pinned smooth, her face soft with practiced sorrow. My first thought was not fear. It was recognition. I had seen that face in county hearings when someone came prepared to sound innocent. The principal thanked everyone for coming. A local pastor said a short prayer. Then Marceline stepped to the microphone before anyone announced her. She gave a small laugh, as if she had been asked to speak, though I later found out she had not. Many of you know my son, Ansel Brannock, she began. The gym softened around her. People turned their bodies toward the stage. He is a good man, a father, a husband, and a son. Since his accident, our family has faced pain I would not wish on anyone. She touched her chest. And I want to thank every person who has supported the Brannock Recovery Fund. My skin went tight. Bowden looked at me, then back at her. Marceline continued, "Sadly, sometimes tragedy brings out difficult situations inside a family. Sometimes the people closest to the money and the child do not always make choices that include the rest of us." A low murmur moved through the gym. I felt Karis watching me. "We are asking tonight," Marceline said, "that future support for Ansel be placed under the care of the Brannock family, where it can be handled with honesty, transparency, and love." Then she looked straight at me. Not for long, just long enough. Long enough for the room to understand who she meant. There are moments when sound disappears, even though the world is still making noise. I saw people clap, but I could not hear the first few seconds of it. I saw Stellan lower his eyes like a man trying to hide satisfaction behind sadness. I saw Karis place one hand over her mouth as if she was heartbroken, but her eyes were sharp. Then I felt Bowden tug my sleeve. He had frosting on his finger and fear on his face. "Mom," he asked, "did you really steal Dad's money?" That question did what Marceline's speech could not. It reached into the deepest part of me and touched something raw. I wanted to defend myself in front of the whole room. I wanted to take that microphone and say every name, every date, every strange call, every lie. But Bowden was looking at me like the world had become unsafe. If I fought there, he would remember the fight more than the truth. So I knelt in front of him and said, "No, sweetheart, I did not." Then I stood, took his hand, and walked him out through the side door while people pretended not to stare. Outside, the air was so cold it burned my lungs. Bowden cried in the car without making much sound. That hurt more than if he had sobbed. I drove home slowly through the dark and told myself one sentence again and again. She brought a microphone. I have evidence. The next morning, I did not go to work. I called in personal leave, made Bowden pancakes, drove him to school, and walked him all the way to his classroom door. Mrs. Valen pulled me aside with tears in her eyes. "I am so sorry about last night," she said. "That should not have happened here." I asked if anyone from the Brannock family had contacted the school about Bowden. Her face gave me the answer before her words did. Karis had called the office that morning asking to be added as an emergency contact because Marit is under stress and may not be reachable. Mrs. Valen said the office refused without my written permission. I thanked her, went to my car, and wrote it down. Then I drove to the county office, but not to work. I went to the records room where public business filings were stored. Brannock Recovery Fund did not appear as a registered nonprofit. It was not a charity. It was not a foundation. After 30 minutes of searching, I found something else. Brannock Equipment Renewal, LLC, filed by Stellan Brannock 9 months earlier. Mailing address, a rented office behind a closed tire shop. Purpose, equipment repair and resale. I sat at the computer and read the filing twice. Then I remembered the phrase from Karis's post. Supporting the Brannock Recovery Fund. Recovery. Renewal. Similar enough to confuse donors. Different enough to hide behind. The real break came from Mrs. Noreen Pike, a retired teacher who lived near the harbor and had known Ansel since he was 12. She called me that afternoon. Her voice shook with embarrassment. "Honey," she said, "I gave $500 to Ansel's fund. I thought it was going to therapy bills. After last night, something didn't sit right. Did you receive any of that?" I told her no. She was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "I still have a copy of the check." She brought it to my house in a blue folder, along with a printed email from Karis thanking her for supporting the Brannock family during Marit's difficult period of financial control. The check was made out to Brannock Equipment Renewal, LLC, with Ansel Recovery written in the memo line. I stared at that check until the words blurred. Noreen touched my hand. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have asked you." I wanted to say it was okay, but it was not. So I said, "Thank you for bringing me the truth." After she left, I opened my folder and created a second section, Financial Trail. By midnight, 3 more donors had answered my careful messages. 2 had written checks. 1 had sent money through an online payment link Karis had posted. None of it had come to me. None of it had paid for Ansel's therapy. All roads pointed toward Stellan. But money was only half of the lie. The other half was the accident. For months, I had heard pieces of the story whispered around me. Marceline had suggested I called Ansel that night and asked him to come home through the storm. Karis told a parent I needed him for something small, and that was why he was on County Road 550. Stellan once said if he hadn't been rushing back, maybe he would have waited out the weather. Every version placed the guilt near me without saying it directly. I had not called Ansel that night. My phone records proved it. But a phone record is quiet, and a rumor is loud. 2 nights after the fundraiser, Bowden came upstairs from the basement carrying Ansel's old black camera bag. "Mom, can I use Dad's camera for my science project?" he asked. I almost said no because grief makes ordinary objects feel dangerous. Instead, I opened the bag. Inside were lens caps, a dead battery, a cracked filter, and a tiny memory card tucked into a side pocket. I knew Ansel sometimes used a dashboard camera when he drove in bad weather, because he said Michigan roads were full of surprises and insurance companies loved excuses. My hands started to shake before I even put the card into my laptop. The video was dark and grainy, but the audio was clear enough. Ansel was driving. Snow hit the windshield like sand. His phone was on speaker. Marceline's voice filled my kitchen. "Ansel, I need you to help your brother tonight. The bank man is coming in the morning, and Stellan cannot have that loader sitting there. It will look bad." Ansel sounded tired. "Mom, the roads are terrible." Stellan's voice cut in from farther away. "It's 1 trip. I'll owe you." Marceline said, "Your brother is family. Don't make me beg while your wife has you locked down like a hired hand." My breath stopped. Ansel said my name then, soft and frustrated. "Marit has nothing to do with this." Marceline replied, "Then prove you still know where you came from." A few minutes later, the road vanished in white. Ansel cursed, the truck slid, and the video went wild. I slammed the laptop shut before the crash sound finished. Then I opened it again because truth is not always gentle, but it is still truth. Marceline had sent him onto that road. Stellan had needed help hiding equipment from a bank inspection, and they had spent 6 months letting people believe I was the reason Ansel nearly died. I called Tansy Whitcomb first. She worked 2 desks down from me at the county office, had 3 grown children, and could detect nonsense faster than anyone I had ever met. She came over with coffee and no unnecessary questions. I showed her the donation checks, the LLC filing, Karis's emails, the school contact attempt, the rehab call notes, and finally the dashcam transcript I had typed because I could not make myself play the crash again. Tansy read everything at my kitchen table. When she finished, she sat back and said, "Marit, stop defending yourself in rooms where people came to misunderstand you. Build the record." I almost laughed because that was exactly what I had been doing, but hearing it from someone else made it feel less lonely. "What if I'm too late?" I asked. She looked toward the hallway where Bowden's nightlight glowed blue. "You are not late. You are documented." The next morning, she gave me the name of an attorney downtown named Ione Calder. Ione Calder's office was above a bookstore on Washington Street, with old radiators, plain walls, and a view of snow piled along the curb. She was 54, calm, narrow-eyed, and did not waste words. I told her everything from the first rehab call to the school gym. She did not gasp. She did not call Marceline evil. She listened like a person building a bridge across a dangerous river. Then she spread my papers across her desk in neat groups. "Medical access interference," she said, tapping one stack. "School boundary violations, defamation, unauthorized fundraising using your husband's name and medical crisis, possible conversion of donor funds, business records tying the money to Stellan, and this dash cam audio changes the emotional center of the whole matter." I asked what I could do without dragging Ansel and Bowden into a public legal war. Ione folded her hands. "You do not need revenge. You need a paper trail strong enough to make revenge unnecessary." Then she explained the plan in plain English: a cease and desist letter, a demand for accounting of every donation collected in Ansel's name, a correction notice to donors, a warning about school contact and rehab contact, a demand that all false public statements stop immediately, and if they refused, we would move forward with civil claims and report the fundraising issue to the proper authorities. Before the letter went out, they made one more mistake. People like Marceline often do. They mistake silence for surrender. On Monday morning, North Bay Recovery called me. Marceline had asked whether Ansel could be moved to a family-approved care decision list because she believed I was emotionally compromised. The administrator denied it and emailed me a summary. That afternoon, Stellan texted me for the first time in 3 weeks. "You need to stop digging before you make this worse for everyone." I screenshotted it. At 3 o'clock, Karis walked into Bowden's school office and tried to leave a note saying she had permission to take him to visit his grandmother after school. She did not have permission. The office called me before Bowden even knew. I thanked them and asked for written confirmation. By 5, I had 3 new records. By 6, Ione had them too. Her reply was short. "Letter goes tomorrow. They are helping your case." The certified letter reached Marceline's house on Thursday at 11:18 in the morning. I knew because Ione's assistant called to confirm delivery. I was sitting in my car outside North Bay Recovery, holding a paper cup of coffee that had gone cold. I had just visited Ansel. He had squeezed my hand twice when I said Bowden's name. That was our language on good days. 2 squeezes meant he was present. 2 squeezes meant keep going. I sat there imagining Marceline opening the envelope at her glass kitchen table, the same table where she wrote thank you notes and planned other people's reputations. The first page would offend her. The second page would scare her. The third page, the one listing donor checks and the LLC, would send her to Stellan. The dash cam transcript would do what I could not do in the school gym. It would speak without shaking. My phone rang 12 minutes later. "Marceline." I let it go to voicemail. She called again. Then Karis. Then Stellan. I answered none of them. At 12:07, a text came from Marceline. "Family meeting, Saturday, Community Foundation office. We will settle this." I stared at the word family for a long time. Then I forwarded the message to Ione, who replied, "Do not go alone." So I did not. Saturday morning was bright and bitter cold. Lake Superior looked like hammered steel under the winter sun. I dropped Bowden at Tansy's house with his backpack, his snow boots, and a promise that I would be back by lunch. He hugged me harder than usual. "Are you going to talk to Grandma?" he asked. I said yes. He looked down at his gloves. Can you tell her I don't like when people say bad things about you? I knelt in front of him. I'm going to tell her something like that. He nodded, then whispered, and tell her Dad wouldn't like it either. That sentence stayed in my chest the whole drive downtown. The Community Foundation office sat in a brick building near the harbor. It had clean windows, a conference room, and a wall of donor plaques that made the place feel honest, which was probably why Marceline chose it. She wanted the room to do some of her speaking for her. When I walked in with Ione beside me, Marceline was already seated at the head of the table. Stellan sat to her right, pale and stiff. Karis sat to her left, eyes red, but whether from tears or fear I could not tell. There was no microphone this time. That felt important. Marceline looked at Ione first. This is a private family matter. Ione set her leather folder on the table. Not anymore. Not after public accusations and public fundraising. I stayed standing for a moment because I wanted them to see that I had chosen where to put my feet. Then I sat across from Marceline, opened my folder, and placed one page on the table. It was the donation check from Noreen Pike. You used a microphone to make me look guilty, I said. I brought documents because documents do not need a microphone. Marceline's face tightened. I never named you. You did not need to, I said. You looked at me while asking people to move support away from my control. You told the room money and children were being controlled. My son heard you. He asked me if I stole from his father. Karis lowered her eyes. Stellan stared at the window. Marceline opened her mouth, but I kept going. My voice was not loud. It did not have to be. I never opened a recovery fund. I never received donor money. I never controlled the account you asked people to support. This check was written to Brannock Equipment Renewal, LLC. That company belongs to Stellan. Stellan pushed back from the table. It was temporary, he said. His voice cracked on the second word. The money was going to be moved. I looked at him. Moved where? To Ansel's therapy bills? To the ramp I paid for? To the rehab balance I have been paying every month? I placed another page down. 3 donors, 2 checks, 1 online payment link, all connected to the business you filed 9 months ago. You used my husband's name and my son's pain to collect money while your equipment business was failing. Marceline turned toward him slowly. For the first time, she looked old. Stellan, she said, tell me she is wrong. He rubbed both hands over his face. I was trying to keep everything from falling apart. I said, no. You were trying to keep yourself from being exposed. Karis whispered, we thought Marit was being difficult. I turned to her. You told school parents I was unstable. You tried to add yourself to Bowden's emergency contact list. You tried to take him without permission. That is not concern. That is a pattern. Her lips trembled. I missed my brother. So did my son, I said. But you made his grief heavier. Then I placed the dashcam transcript in front of Marceline. She did not touch it. Maybe she knew before reading the first line. Maybe guilt has a smell and she recognized it. For 6 months, I said, you let people believe Ansel was on that road because of me. You let them believe I called him out into the storm. You let my son live near that lie. Marceline's voice was thin. I never said that directly. Again, I said, you did not need to. Karis repeated it. Stellan hinted at it. People heard it, and your voice is on the recording. Ione quietly slid a certified transcript across the table. Marceline read 3 lines before her hand started to shake. I watched her reach the part where she told Ansel to prove he still knew where he came from. Her mouth pressed into a hard white line. Stellan stood. Mom, I was in trouble. The bank was coming. I needed the loader moved. Marceline looked at him like the room had changed shape around her. You told me Marit was turning him against us. I said she had him wrapped up in her rules. He was recovering from a head injury, I said. Rules were keeping him alive. The room went quiet. Outside, a snowplow scraped the street, metal against ice, a harsh, ordinary sound that somehow made the silence deeper. I thought of Bowden standing in that gym. I thought of Ansel squeezing my hand twice. I thought of every person who had looked at me with pity sharpened into judgment. Then I closed the folder halfway. Here are the terms, I said. Stellan will provide a full accounting of every dollar collected in Ansel's name or for his recovery. Any money not used for Ansel's care will be returned to donors or placed into a verified medical trust controlled by legal paperwork, not family feelings. Marceline, you will send a written correction to every donor and every person who received that fundraising message. It will say I did not control or misuse those funds. It will say future donations are not to be made through your family. Karis, you will not contact Bowden's school, his teachers, his friends' parents, or attempt pickup again. All visits with Bowden go through me. Rehab contact goes through me and the authorized care system. If any of you repeat the lie in public or private in a way that reaches my son, my employer, the school, or Ansel's care team, the next step will not be a meeting. It will be a filing. Marceline looked at me with anger, but under it was something else. Fear, maybe. Or the first honest understanding that I was no longer asking to be believed. I was requiring them to deal with the proof. You are keeping my family from me, she said. There it was, the final old sentence, dressed in grief. I shook my head. No, Marceline. I am keeping your lies away from my child. That is different. She flinched. I did not enjoy it. That surprised me. For months, I had imagined truth landing on her like justice. But when it came, it felt less like victory and more like cleaning glass from a floor where my son still had to walk. You humiliated me in front of Bowden, I said. But you did more than hurt me. You taught him that adults can use a crowd to make a lie feel true. So now I am teaching him something else. Evidence matters. Boundaries matter. His mother does not have to scream to be heard. Karis began crying then, quietly, into her sleeve. Stellan sat down like his legs had given out. Marceline looked at the donor check, the transcript, the letter, and then at me. What do you want from me? She asked. A correction, I said. Repayment. Distance until trust is earned. And no more lies in front of my son. I stood. Ione gathered the papers we were not leaving behind. At the door, I turned back once. You called this a family meeting, so I will say this as clearly as I can. My husband is your son. Bowden is your grandson. But I am his mother, and I am Ansel's wife. You do not get to erase me because the truth makes you uncomfortable. The correction went out 4 days later. It was not warm. It was not beautiful. It did not sound like repentance. It sounded like a woman writing under legal pressure, because that was exactly what it was. But it said the words that mattered. Marit Brannock did not control the Brannock Recovery Fund. Marit Brannock did not misuse donations. Future support for Ansel should not be sent through Brannock Equipment Renewal, LLC. Stellan agreed to an accounting and repayment plan. Some donors were angry. Some were embarrassed. Noreen Pike called me and said, "Truth takes longer than gossip, but it leaves better footprints." I wrote that down too, not as evidence, but as comfort. Karis sent one text. I am sorry Bowden heard that. I did not answer for 2 days. Then I wrote back, start by respecting the school boundary. She did. Stellan's first repayment arrived in March with no message attached. I preferred it that way. Marceline stayed silent for almost 3 weeks. For the first time in half a year, silence felt like peace instead of a storm gathering somewhere I could not see. Ansel's recovery did not become magical because the truth came out. Real life is not that generous. He still had hard days. He still forgot words. He still got frustrated when his hand would not hold a fork the way it used to. But one afternoon in April, I brought Bowden to North Bay Recovery after school. Bowden showed him a drawing from art class. It showed 3 people standing near the lake. Dad in a chair, Mom holding a folder, Bowden wearing a red hat. Far away near the edge of the page, he had drawn a gray house with a tiny figure beside it. "That's Grandma," he said. "She's not gone. She's just not in the middle." I looked at the drawing and had to turn away for a second. Ansel studied it for a long time. Then he reached for my hand. 2 squeezes. I smiled. "I know," I said. But then he swallowed hard, focused the way he did when speech therapy pushed him to the edge of exhaustion, and said 3 words, rough but clear. "You stood up." Bowden looked at me. I looked at Ansel. For months, I had carried records, fear, anger, bills, rumors, and the weight of staying calm when calm felt impossible. Those 3 words did not erase any of it, but they gave it a place to rest. People sometimes think boundaries are walls. I used to think that too, but I learned they are more like doors with locks. The right people can still come in. They just cannot break the frame, step over your child, and call it love. Marceline did eventually ask to see Bowden. She asked, not demanded. I allowed 1 short visit at a park with me present. She brought hot chocolate and did not mention money, the accident, or family loyalty. It was awkward. It was careful. It was not forgiveness. But it was a beginning with rules. Maybe one day she would become the kind of grandmother Bowden deserved. Maybe she would not. Either way, I had stopped building my peace around her choices. My mother-in-law humiliated me in front of my son, but my evidence did more than destroy the family lie. It gave my son back the truth about his mother. It gave my husband back the truth about the night he was hurt. And it gave me back something I had almost lost while trying to be polite. My own voice. Not the loudest voice in the room. Not the one with the microphone. Just the one that had the record, the proof, and enough dignity to walk out quietly before coming back with the truth. The end. Commentary, discussion, and lessons. Now that we have heard Marit's story, let's slow down for a moment and really sit with it. Because this was not just a story about a mother-in-law being cruel. It was not just about a family argument, a school event, or a money problem. Underneath everything, this was a story about how a lie can grow when people stay silent, how public shame can damage a child, and how one calm person with evidence can change the whole room without raising her voice. At first, Marit looks like someone who is simply trying to survive. Her husband, Ansel, is badly injured after a winter accident. Her son, Bowden, is confused and scared. Her home is no longer peaceful because every part of her life is being touched by uncertainty. She has bills, medical updates, therapy visits, school responsibilities, and a child who needs her to stay steady. That alone would be enough to break many people. But on top of that, Ansel's family begins to build a quiet campaign against her. They do not attack her all at once. They do it slowly. 1 phone call here, 1 rumor there, 1 school boundary crossed, 1 fake concern, 1 public comment. And this is what makes the story feel real, because many harmful situations do not begin with 1 big explosion. They begin with small disrespect that people expect you to ignore. Marceline, the mother-in-law, is one of the most dangerous kinds of people in this story because she knows how to look caring while acting controlling. In public, she presents herself as a grieving mother. She uses soft words, community respect, and sympathy. She does not walk into a room saying, "I want power." She says, "I am worried." She says, "This is for family." She says, "We need to protect Ansel." And that is why people believe her. She understands that if you wrap control in the language of concern, many people will not question it. But concern without respect is not love. Concern that ignores boundaries is not kindness. Concern that humiliates a mother in front of her child is not protection. It is control wearing a nice coat. The school fundraiser scene is the heart of this story. It is painful because Marit is not attacked in private. She is attacked in a room full of people. That matters. Public humiliation has a special kind of cruelty. When someone embarrasses you in private, it hurts. But when they do it in public, they are not only trying to hurt you, they are trying to control how everyone else sees you. Marceline uses the microphone because she wants the crowd to become part of the punishment. She wants people to look at Marit with doubt. She wants Marit to feel alone in front of the town. And the worst part is that Boden is there. He is only 8 years old. He does not understand adult money, legal control, donation accounts, or family manipulation. He only hears that maybe his mother did something wrong. That is why his question hurts so deeply. "Mom, did you really steal Dad's money?" That one question shows the real damage of the lie. This is one of the strongest points in the story. Adults sometimes think children do not understand what is happening, but children understand the emotional weather in a room. They may not know the details, but they know when people are looking at their mother with judgment. They know when a voice is being used to shame someone. They know when love feels unsafe. Boden's question is not just a question about money. It is a child trying to find solid ground. He is asking, "Can I still trust the person who makes me feel safe?" That is why Marit does not fight in the gym. She could have defended herself. She could have screamed the truth. She could have taken the microphone and exposed everyone right there. But she chooses her son over the crowd. That is a powerful choice. She understands that winning the room in that moment might cost Boden more fear. So she walks out. Some people may think walking out is weakness. In this story, walking out is discipline. Marit's strength is not loud. It is organized. That is what makes her different. She does not try to win every argument. She does not respond to every rumor. She does not chase every person who believes the wrong thing. Instead, she keeps records. This is one of the biggest lessons from the story. When people are twisting the truth, your memory may not be enough. Your emotions may not be enough. Your words may not be enough. But dates, messages, school records, business filings, donation checks, call logs, and transcripts can build a wall that lies cannot easily climb. Marit works as a county records clerk, so she already understands that paper can protect people. She knows that records are not dramatic, but they are powerful. A rumor can move fast, but evidence lasts longer. Stellan's role is also important because he shows us that sometimes the loudest conflict is not the real conflict. On the surface, it looks like Marceline is the main problem. She is the one with the microphone. She is the one making speeches. She is the one trying to control the family's story. But behind her, Stellan has a financial reason to keep Marit away from the truth. He helped create or use a fake recovery fund connected to his failing business. He lets people believe donations are helping Ansel, while the money is tied to his own problems. This is a powerful twist because it changes the story from simple family drama into a deeper betrayal. The family lie is not only emotional, it is financial. They are not only trying to make Marit look bad, they are hiding where the money went. This is where the story becomes a warning. Sometimes people do not attack you because you did something wrong. Sometimes they attack you because you are close to discovering what they did wrong. Marit is treated like a problem because her presence is dangerous to the lie. She is the wife. She knows the bills. She knows the medical care. She knows what money has and has not come in. If she asks the right questions, the whole story falls apart. So the family tries to make her look unstable, greedy, and controlling before she can prove anything. This is a common tactic in toxic situations. First, they damage your reputation. Then, when you speak, people are already prepared to doubt you. That is why documentation matters so much. It gives your voice support when others have already poisoned the room. Karis, the sister-in-law, shows another kind of harm. She may not be the mastermind, but she helps the lie travel. She whispers at school. She tries to interfere with Bowden's pickup list. She repeats the family story without checking the truth. People like Karis can be very dangerous because they often see themselves as loyal, not cruel. But loyalty without honesty can become damage. She says she misses her brother, and that may be true. But missing someone does not give you the right to hurt their wife or confuse their child. Grief explains pain. It does not excuse manipulation. This story makes that clear in a very mature way. One of the most emotional parts of the story is the dashcam memory card. That discovery changes everything. Until that moment, Marit can prove the money trail, the school interference, and the public humiliation. But the accident itself is still surrounded by whispers. The family has allowed people to think Marit caused Ansel to be on that road. That kind of guilt is heavy. Even when you know you did not do something, if enough people hint at it, the lie can still touch your peace. Then the recording proves the truth. Ansel was not driving through the storm because of Marit. He was driving because Marceline and Stellan pressured him to help with Stellan's business problem. That reveal is painful because it shows how far the family went. They did not only steal money from the truth, they tried to steal the meaning of the accident itself. But notice how Marit handles the proof. She does not run online and post everything. She does not try to destroy them in the loudest way possible. She goes to a lawyer. This is why the revenge in this story feels strong, but still mature. The revenge is not chaos. It is correction. Ione Calder, the attorney, gives one of the most important ideas in the story. You do not need revenge. You need a paper trail strong enough to make revenge unnecessary. That line captures the whole message. True power is not always about making people suffer. Sometimes true power is making the truth so clear that the lie cannot survive anymore. The final confrontation is satisfying because Marit does not become like the people who hurt her. Marceline used a microphone. Marit uses documents. Marceline used emotion to pressure the crowd. Marit uses facts to settle the matter. Marceline tried to turn people against her. Marit does not need a crowd at all. She sits in that office with the attorney, the checks, the transcript, the records, and the boundaries, and she says what needs to be said. She does not beg. She does not perform pain for sympathy. She does not ask them to please believe her. She proves it. That is a very different kind of strength. The line, "Documents do not need a microphone," is one of the strongest ideas in the story. It means truth does not always have to be loud. It does not have to fight for attention the way lies do. Lies often need performance. Lies need repetition. Lies need people whispering and clapping and nodding. Truth can sit quietly in a folder until the right moment. And when that moment comes, truth can change everything. The ending is also important because it does not turn into a fantasy where every villain is destroyed forever and life becomes perfect. Ansel is still healing. Bodin is still processing what happened. Marit still has to manage boundaries. Stellan has to repay money. Karis has to respect school rules. Marceline may or may not truly change. This makes the ending more realistic. Healing is not instant. Justice does not erase pain. A correction does not undo the moment when a child asked if his mother stole from his father. But it gives the family a way forward where the lie is no longer in control. The moment when Ansel says, "You stood up," is quiet, but it carries so much weight. He cannot give a long speech. He cannot fix everything. But those 3 words tell Marit that he sees her. After months of being doubted, blamed, and publicly shamed, she receives a simple truth from the person she was fighting for. She stood up, not with screaming, not with revenge for entertainment. She stood up with patience, records, courage, and love for her son. Bodin's drawing at the end is another beautiful symbol. He draws his mother holding a folder, his father in a chair, himself nearby, and his grandmother far away near the edge. That picture tells us how children understand boundaries. Bodin does not erase his grandmother completely. He does not say she cannot exist, but he places her outside the center. That is the lesson. Boundaries do not always mean hatred. Boundaries mean people are placed where their behavior belongs. If someone is unsafe, they do not get the center of your life. They may still exist, but they do not get control. So what do we learn from this story? The first lesson is that public shame should never be ignored just because it is dressed as concern. If someone uses a crowd to make you look guilty, that is not love. That is pressure. A person who truly cares about healing does not humiliate you in front of your child. The second lesson is that children should never be used as emotional weapons. Bodin was not a symbol, not a replacement for his father, and not a tool for the Brannock family to control Marit. He was a child who needed safety. Any adult who brings a child into a grown-up lie is already crossing a serious line. The third lesson is that documentation can protect your peace. We often think strength means arguing better or speaking louder, but sometimes strength means saving the message, writing down the date, asking for confirmation, keeping the receipt, and refusing to let people rewrite history. The fourth lesson is that not every family concern is pure. Some people use family language to hide selfish motives. In this story, the family said they were worried about Ansel, but the money trail showed another truth. When actions and words do not match, believe the actions and check the records. The fifth lesson is that calm does not mean weak. Marit's calm was not fear. It was strategy. She knew that if she reacted emotionally, they would use her reaction as proof against her. So she waited, gathered evidence, and moved carefully. That kind of calm takes strength. The sixth lesson is that boundaries are not bitterness. This is very important. Marit did not set boundaries because she wanted revenge forever. She set boundaries because she wanted safety, truth, and respect. A boundary says, "You can be in my life only if you stop harming it." That is not cruelty. That is wisdom. The seventh lesson is that truth may arrive slowly, but it can still arrive. Gossip moves fast. Lies can spread in one night. But evidence, when handled well, has a deeper power. It may take longer, but when it comes, it can stand in places where emotions cannot. And maybe the biggest lesson is this: you do not have to become loud just because someone lied loudly. You do not have to lose yourself to prove yourself. Marit did not become cruel to defeat cruelty. She did not become dishonest to defeat dishonesty. She stayed steady. She protected her son. She protected her husband's truth. She let the evidence speak, and when the time came, she spoke clearly. That is why this story works so well. It is not just about revenge. It is about correction. It is about a mother teaching her son that truth matters. It is about a wife defending her husband's name while he cannot fully defend it himself. It is about a woman refusing to let a powerful family turn her into the villain of their own mistake. In the end, Marit did not need the microphone. She had the record. She had the proof. She had the courage to walk away from humiliation and come back with the truth. And that is the kind of strength many people forget to respect. Quiet strength, patient strength, documented strength. The kind of strength that does not ask the crowd for permission before it stands up. So after this story, maybe we can all ask ourselves one question. Where in our own lives are we trying too hard to explain ourselves to people who already chose not to understand? Because sometimes the answer is not another argument. Sometimes the answer is a boundary. Sometimes the answer is a record. And sometimes the answer is walking out quietly, not because you lost, but because you are going to return with the truth. This story is our own original written work. It is inspired by real-life situations and problems that people often share on Reddit and other public online platforms, but the story itself is not copied from any single person or post. Names, locations, characters, timelines, companies, organizations, and personal details are changed or fictionalized for privacy and creative storytelling. This video uses AI-generated voiceover and AI-generated photos/visuals/images. Script writing, topic research/finding, commentary, discussion, explanation, editing, video creation/management, final review, and uploading are done manually by our team. This is not an automation channel. This content is created for entertainment, commentary, discussion, and life lesson purposes only. It should not be taken as legal, financial, medical, or professional advice. All script/story/content belongs to Pure Drama Stories. Do not copy, reuse, re-upload, or republish this content without permission. Unauthorized use may result in copyright action or claim. The end